You're listening to The Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Hristodoulou.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to The Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Hristodoulou, and it is that time again. Monday Night Football in the rearview mirror, and we honestly had ourselves a pretty entertaining game, I would say, at the very least, between the Broncos and the Browns, capping off week number 13 of the season. It was a fun matchup. Broncos come away with the W, a game that I honestly thought was going to kind of be a dud too, so I'm glad it turned out the way it was. Well worth staying up late and recording into the wee early hours of the morning, but we're diving into power rankings through the tier list, ranking all 32 teams from worst to first. As always, I invite you all to comment down below. Let me hear your power rankings, your thoughts on mine. What am I getting right? What am I getting wrong? Up on the screen here, we have the previous week's rankings, so you can see where everyone stood coming out of last weekend's games and going into this week 13. And now we turn the page. We'll take a look at where everyone stands heading into week number 14. Beginning, of course, as always, with the number one overall category. We've got ourselves 6 teams here. Starting at the bottom at number 32 at 2-10, we're looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars. At 31, we have the New York Giants. At number 30, the Raiders. At 29, the Patriots. At 28, the Titans. And then at 27, the New York Jets have made their way into the bottom of the NFL's barrel. So the Jaguars at 2-10, tough situation with Trevor Lawrence. Just not what you want to see have happen to the quarterback. A cheap shot, however you want to call it. I agree. Just not the way things should be done in today's day and age of the NFL. And unfortunately for Trevor Lawrence, this is probably going to cost him some more time. And it kind of leads you to the question of just, is it even worth having Trevor Lawrence play anymore the remainder of the season at this point? The season is over, and it's been over for a while. And I was kind of in the camp of not really understanding how Trevor Lawrence, with how dire the situation kind of seemed with the injury in his non-throwing shoulder, how he even found himself back in playing. And this kind of felt like a team that was like a bunch of coaches and maybe even front office people trying to save their jobs by not forcing, but rushing Trevor Lawrence back and getting him under center. I don't really see what the net positives were other than those people trying to save their jobs, having Trevor Lawrence come back with his injury and playing. And now if you're the cons and you're taking a look at Trevor Lawrence laying on the field motionless, you've got to be questioning a lot of decision making. Obviously, that's not something you can plan for. It's not something you anticipate have happen. But knowing that your star quarterback, your franchise guy that you just handed a massive contract to, is already dealing with ailing injuries and was considering surgery at one point, to see that happen to him afterwards, that's just one of those things where I feel like a lot of jobs might have been lost, and I'm kind of surprised we already haven't heard about it, but it won't be something that comes as a surprise whenever everyone gets cut loose in Jacksonville. The Jaguars right above them at number 31 here. Another team I'm just kind of waiting for the firings to ensue. I know that there is the whole we're not going to fire Brian Daboll at this point being said by ownership, but it's one of those things that we have heard before and we have seen the end result of it end up being a head coach getting fired. And it's not something that I think is going to change this time around. Maybe it gets held off to the end of the season here, but I don't really see how the way this season has gone, where the Giants are sitting on 2-10. They had to end up releasing Daniel Jones because of just the way the benching was handled. It's just been all around ugly in New York, whether you're talking about the Giants or even the Jets, who are also in this grouping here. And now the Giants join a very, very tiny list of teams to have allowed Dallas to rush over for 100 yards. Just 3 teams total, the Giants being one of them, doing so this season here, as Rico Dowdle had himself a pretty good game against him. The Raiders at number 30, a blown snap away, obviously, from knocking off the Chiefs in one of the biggest, or what would have been one of the biggest upsets of the season. It's unfortunate that this is the way things went down, but when you have a lot of young players in a situation like that, things like that tend to happen. So the conspiracy theorists. I hear what you're saying, and it's got to look a little bit crazy watching the Chiefs come away with some of the most improbable wins every single week, and this one certainly took the cake here. Whether the situation of the pre-snap penalty or how that was all sorted out and the Chiefs still ending up with the football and ultimately kneeling and winning, I don't know what the right answer is there. I'm not an official, but that whole situation was crazy. A positive to take away from this game, though, Brock Bowers, my goodness. Offensive Rookie of the Year award should definitely be something he is in the conversation for as a rookie and a tight end at that, leading the NFL in receptions with 84 right now. There is no reason why Brock Osweiler is what I want to call him here. Brock Bowers should not be in that conversation. He deserves to be in that position. A tight end of all positions leading the NFL right now, and it's a rookie at that. Bowers absolutely deserves to be in that conversation. The Patriots at 29, sitting at 3-10. I think with New England, it's time to look a little bit bigger picture here, in my opinion, because a lot of people, myself included, have harped on the offense and the deficiencies and the lack of talent on that side of the football here. But this football team is lacking everywhere, not just on the offense, not even just on the defense, as we're starting to see each and every single week here, but clearly within the coaching staff as well. I have been very much on the side of Jerod Mayo deserves more than a year. He needs at least 2 to really kind of get an idea as to what's going on here. But I'm going to say this. This is now the 4th time, I believe, that Jerod Mayo has had to walk back comments he's made about the team following an ugly loss, however the situation played itself out. And in this game here, somehow, some way, between the walking back of the comments about how the team won a Super Bowl, not calling a timeout in a very similar situation late in the game to what happened with the Colts this past Sunday, but also on top of that, the decision to go for the 68-yard field goal and him basically outright saying he didn't know what the odds were on whether it was better to go for a 68-yard, mind you, a 68-yard field goal, a record-setting, never have been made before type of field goal. He wasn't sure if it was better to go for that or a 50-yard Hail Mary, maybe 55 if you want to get to the middle of the end zone type of throw that you have seen been completed many a times in NFL history and NFL lore. It's crazy to me. It really is crazy, having grown up in the Patriots dynasty, not a Patriots fan, but growing up in New England in the Patriots dynasty, to see where they are right now is baffling, in my opinion. At 28, the Titans sitting at 3-9 here. This one's a little bit incredible to me, I will say, because it's incredible to watch. And I know it was a divisional matchup last week, but it's incredible to watch the Tennessee Titans come in and play the Texans the way they did last week and then turn right around and look like they forgot that they had to play a game this Sunday. It makes no sense sometimes with some of the things that we see pop up in the NFL. And I honestly, going into this game, I picked the Commanders. I expected the Commanders to win. I saw a lot of people who really like the Titans in this. I talked to a lot of people that really like the Titans. I work in an area where sports is what everyone does, and everyone's looking at these kinds of matchups with the NFL right now. And a lot of people either picked the Titans or basically said, if the Titans pull this out, considering where the Commanders are right now, it wouldn't be too surprising. They just took down the Texans literally a week ago. But to see them come in those first 5 drives, go punt, fumble on the kick return, punt, and allowing 4 straight touchdowns in that same process, that is just not the way I thought that game was going to go. Tough look for the Titans. They are what they are, though. And then at number 27, to round out the group, from the pick 6 on, it was the same old Jets. The Jets gonna Jets. With reports coming out now that it sounds like it's unlikely Aaron Rodgers is back in New York, I think at this stage, it's fair to just sit and wonder what the future of the New York Jets is going to look like. We've seen Robert Saleh be fired. We have seen Joe Douglas be fired as well. It sounds like Aaron Rodgers is probably not going to be back in New York, despite him trying to say he would like to be there. I'm going to assume that means that Devontae Adams is going to get moved, and you honestly have to wonder if this Jets team is maybe willing to move on from some other key contributors as well and just hit like a full-blown reset, get as much capital as you can so the new regime can come in and they can basically build their idea of what the New York Jets should be going forward. I can't believe we're already saying that again with the Jets, because this was supposed to be a season of, even like, if you didn't think Super Bowl or bust, if you thought this is going to be, maybe a 10-7, number 7 playoff seed if things really went poorly for them, this is not what I anticipated. I know a lot of other people didn't anticipate that as well, but unfortunately, this season, with the way they lost that game against the Seahawks, is just typical same old Jets. Moving into the struggle bus category, we have ourselves a handful of teams on this one. The struggle bus carrying a lot of passengers right now. Sitting at number 26, we have the Browns at 3-9, despite their loss, actually getting bumped up here a few spots and moving out of a category because of how competitive they were. The Saints at 25, Panthers at 24, Bears at 23, Cowboys at 22, Bengals at 21, and the Dolphins rounding out the category at number 20. The Browns, with Jameis Winston passing for nearly 500 yards, sitting at 497 to be exact. He had 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 2 being pick sixes. If you asked me to sum up the Jameis Winston experience and provide you an example of what it is like to watch Jameis Winston at his absolute peak of football play, that Monday night matchup against the Broncos is a prime example of that. When you think his 30-for-30 season, that game could be thrown right into the tape, and you would have convinced me that if I didn't know it was in 2024, I would have thought it fit right into that season with the way that whole thing played itself out. It's unfortunate the way things went down because the defense honestly had a pretty good game. Because remember, 14 of the points allowed in that game by Cleveland came via the hands of Jameis Winston himself. Jerry Jeudy had a really good night. Nick Chubb looked pretty good. David Njoku as well. But ultimately, coming up short when it mattered most with the interceptions, the Browns taking a loss here. But I did want to give them some credit for looking as good as they did in a Monday night matchup against a potential playoff-bound Denver Broncos team right now. Saints at number 25, I'm going to give them credit for their loss here in this because I really thought they were going to come into this game and get rolled with just the way the defense has looked. And this is a team that is injured in so many ways and is missing so many key contributors on both sides. But the offense specifically is just down and hurt, and it's been like this all season long. But to my surprise, 0 points allowed in the first half. They held it down, but second half rolls around, Los Angeles figures it out, kind of gets the ball rolling right out of the gate in that first drive there, going 70 yards for 6. And then from that point on, the offense sputtering, managed a few more points in that second half, but ultimately you have the Rams go touchdown. I believe it was punt, then touchdown, scoring on 3 of their 4 possessions in the second half to put the game away 21-14. Tough finish for the Saints here, but again, another team that I'm kind of looking at as on the fast track to getting a high draft selection and hopefully finally moving on from the Sean Payton era once and for all, because now you've ditched Dennis Allen. You're probably gonna see some of the remnants of that era finally be let go as well, with there being no real attachments moving forward. And this is kind of the reboot that I think the Saints have been waiting for in a post-Breeze, post-Sean Payton era, where you finally can move on now with Dennis Allen being gone as well as a holdover from that regime. Panthers sitting at 24 here. Panthers fans, Adam Thielen caught that football. I picked the Buccaneers to win that game. So selfishly, I'm not too mad that the Panthers lost, but I can sit here and say in my heart of hearts that Adam Thielen caught that football. I thought it was a catch. He was robbed of that catch. That is a catch of the year type of play right there. And it's unfortunate that there wasn't a camera angle showing the other side of the play, because I personally think he survives the ground with that football in his hands. But with the way rules and reversals and things like that are dictated, I understand the whole there's no clear indisputable evidence showing him going to the ground and surviving the catch because they thought he bobbled it going down towards the ground. Anyone with a half-decent brain is probably looking at that and going, he caught that. He's probably surviving the ground with that. Buccaneers fans will probably say he didn't. But listen, I have no tie to either team. That was a catch, and I feel for you. I'm also excited to see that Bryce Young may have potentially benefited from his benching. That was something that I really thought was going to sink his career, but he's honestly, it's looking like he's getting better and better weekly, and it's promising. It's good because this is a franchise that can use any amount of boost it can get coming out of this first season here in a new era with Dave Canales as your head coach and everything that's been changing over there in the last year or so. I don't know where this goes, but there's some positives to take away here, despite the fact that you're sitting on just 3 wins and you were this close to potentially having yourself a 4th. The Bears, finally, in a history-making move, the Chicago Bears have fired a head coach in the middle of an NFL season, and Matt Eberflus, in his firing, becomes the first ever Bears head coach to not deliver the Chicago Bears a victory against the Green Bay Packers. This was a literal disaster of a finish in every single sense of the word imaginable. Disaster. I can't believe what went on through that entire situation. It's one of those topics that is going to be discussed for a long time because as somebody who has played my fair share of Madden in moments, when you realize you're taking a long time to get a play call in and then going to the line of scrimmage and realize, and I understand it's not the same thing before anyone comes after me, but time management is something that we all experience in very different ways and in various aspects of our life. But having played enough Madden in my life, I feel like I've been able to take care of the clock while trying to manage a handful of other things. And I know that I need to call a timeout in those like gut check situations where the clock is ticking, you got to get points, and how nobody in that mess of how long it took them to deliver out that call and then watching Caleb Williams go up to the line of scrimmage and proceed to start making changes, how nobody on that sideline was going, what the hell is going on? Stop this. The fact that that couldn't happen from anyone on that sideline alone proves why the Bears made the right choice. It took a little bit longer than I would have expected. I was a little surprised to see Eberflus out there Friday morning giving his press conference over Zoom. Ultimately, he gets fired not too long after that. And obviously, the Bears are moving on into a new era. So I pose the question to Bears fans, if you're watching this and this gets to you, who do you want to see the Bears go after? I've been seeing the Ben Johnson name get thrown around. I've been seeing a lot of Mike Vrabel going around for a lot of the reasons people were pegging him for Philadelphia, being a tough, gritty, no-nonsense guy. This feels like you'd make a lot of sense in Chicago type of deal. And I know some Bears fans, and they even seem to be on board with that. So there's that. And then there's, of course, like Bobby Slowick from Houston. I'm curious to hear who you would like to see the Bears go after. So if this gets to you, let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to hear, but I'm happy to see the Bears finally moving on. The Cowboys sitting at 22. A win is a win, even if it's a little bit ugly and not the prettiest win, but a win is a win with the Cowboys being in the current state that they are in. Back-to-back scoring drives late in the third quarter, second half, whatever these notes say right here. My goodness. You have Rico Dowdle, who had himself a really good game, 122 yards, a touchdown. Defense racked up 6 sacks. Demarion Overshown's probably your player of the game with the way he played, 9 tackles. He had the pick 6, a fumble recovery as well. In the spotlight with time ticking, because the Cowboys to this point had still not won a game at home. In Jerry World in 2024, you finally got the win on Thanksgiving. Thank goodness for the Cowboys fans. You guys at least deserved that, so I'm happy to see that happen there. A win is a win, even if it's against a down-and-out Giants team that played you pretty close to the end there. Hats off to you, Cowboys. You deserve that win, and Cowboys fans, you deserved it even more. The Bengals sitting at number 21. The defense here is non-existent. And I had to go back because I can't tell you I could not tell you, I guess I should say, off the top of my head, when the last time was that I saw the Pittsburgh Steelers put up over 40 points in a singular game. And I know that some of the defense had part of the scoring in this here, but just the Pittsburgh Steelers as a whole, putting up over 40 points in a game. I had to go all the way back to 2018, Week 10, against the Carolina Panthers, when you still had Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown catching footballs from him, of all people, when they put up 52 points to the Carolina Panthers. That is incredible. But that also shows you the state of where this Bengals team currently is right now. I can't believe how poorly this defense has played this year. And then on the flip side, you have a Bengals team that's averaging some of the highest point totals week in and week out against their opponents. But because the defense can't get a stop, and you're even seeing it from guys like Jamar Chase who are being asked the question, does it feel like you have to score 35 points in a game? And yeah, it kind of seems that way. You have Joe Burrow, who's putting up MVP caliber numbers, but because the team is where it is, he's not going to be in that conversation. I could not imagine where this team would be minus Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase alone. T. Higgins, if you want to throw him in there as well, because he's an important piece to this all as well. This team would be in the gutter. Like the absolute, and they're 4-8, so it's not like they're doing that well. But this could be a legitimate 1-win, like to near winless team if it wasn't for the 30 points a week that Cincinnati's offense puts up to at least keep them competitive and have helped them win a few games. The Dolphins, to round out the group at number 20, could not run the football. The fears about winning games in cold weather in sub-40 temperature, 0-11 in their last 11 games with the temperature at kickoff below 40 degrees. I talked about it in my preview. It's a very real underlying issue with the makeup in Miami. There's obviously not a real way for them to prepare for these types of games, but something has to be done because now people are starting to question the toughness of Miami. And I mean, the way they came out in this game, it just felt like they knew it was coming and they were dreading it and they were not ready for it. It wasn't until they were down, 27-3 that they actually started to really get anything going in that game. And what's crazy is Tua finished the game with 365 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Like that looks like an awesome performance. Your offense is moving, you're racking it up, but no, that's just a lot of second half success because at that point, the Packers felt very comfortable. Maybe they're letting off the gas pedal a little bit. Defense is playing a little bit more lax because you feel like you have this game in the bag. Clearly, Miami's not really finding a ton of success. Downright ugly performance for Miami. Moving into Jeff Fisher, middle of the pack teams, right around 500, just on the outside, looking in as far as the playoffs are concerned. Sitting at number 19, we have ourselves the Indianapolis Colts at 6-7. The 49ers are at number 18, the Rams at 17, Cardinals at 16, and then the Falcons at number 15, rounding out the group, getting knocked out of the playoff hopefuls with another tough loss this week. The Colts, I want to give props to Shane Steichen for trusting in Anthony Richardson to win this football game late in the game, but also on that 2-point conversion. For a quarterback who has been struggling to find a 50% completion rate on a weekly basis, to allow him to step up, put the football in his hands, and not just run it in for that 2, but to deliver a throw and complete the play to ultimately take the 1-point victory against the Patriots this week. I have been very critical of where Indianapolis has been this entire season, and honestly, I've been critical about Indianapolis for years now at this point, dating back to basically the inception of my podcast almost 4 years ago now. And for me, this is the type of stuff that I like to see because they're at least fighting still, even though I really think the Colts would be benefiting from losing football games and getting into a better draft position because they've been hanging around and hovering around 500 for what feels like years now. And I understand not wanting to just tank and, for the sake of better draft selection, but this team needs some of that top-end talent. And I almost selfishly, as somebody who grew up rooting for the Colts, want to see them have a bad year just to maybe bring in some of that nice draft talent, because the Colts, for what it's worth, have done at least a solid job drafting some guys, and if not drafting, using some of those selections that are worth something and sending them out to bring guys in, whatever works. I'm happy to see the Colts finding ways to win, even if it is against just the New England Patriots. But at this point here, this feels like a team that's going to hover around 500, and they're probably still going to miss the playoffs. And that's why I have them at the bottom of Jeff Fisher. The 49ers at number 18, 5-7. Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason both heading to the IR. Christian McCaffrey is going to miss at least 6 weeks. And I love that was put into the press release, at least 6 weeks, as if there's like some expectation that the 49ers are going to rip off maybe 10 wins and sneak into the playoffs. And now I know things are tight right now in this division here, but the 49ers, the way they currently stand, are so far and away out of the playoffs, at least in my mind. I know record-wise and mathematically they're not, but you saw the way they played that game in the snow. This team does not look fit for the playoffs or even for like a difficult challenge at this stage in the season. And I don't blame the players. At this point, it's injuries. And I'm starting to look at the coaching staff, because at some point you have to look at yourself and go, this is not working. Something needs to change. And maybe it is as easy as just pointing at the injuries, because they've dealt with a lot over there. But this is one of the more talented rosters in the NFL, and you'd think that they'd still be able to survive some of that. So maybe I'm being overly critical about them. I've had the 49ers around this position between like 18 and 14 for quite some time now. And with every passing week, I'm feeling more and more comfortable about having them at the bottom end of that group, and probably watching a playoff tournament that is not going to have them involved. The Rams right above them at 6-6. I find it very fitting, and it's not trying to make this be a thing, but I find it very fitting that this team is 6-6 in my Jeff Fisher category, and they're at number 17, literally hanging right on the middle of the league right now. It just feels right that Jeff Fisher's own Rams are sitting right at 500 and smack in the middle of the league right now. Being a game back from Seattle, with a win over them already, they're very much in the hunt. They have to hang on. They have a game literally the final week of the season against Seattle as well. So there is a window of opportunity for them to come away with a win. But that loss against the Cardinals is something that's weighing on them. They have a game against them coming up down the road as well. So there's a lot in the way for the Rams, but the path is clear. And 2 of the games that you have to win before this season is up is that game against the Cardinals and then the following week against the Seahawks. They did not have their best overall game against the Saints. Like we talked about earlier, offense was totally shut down in the first half, which is crazy considering how the defense has been for the large majority of the season. And you could argue that maybe the Saints defense has looked a little bit better since Dennis Allen's been fired in certain spots, but that should have been a game where you have, in my opinion, more talent overall and a better coaching staff set up and just a better system overall in the current situation that both the Rams and Saints are in, considering that this should have been a pretty comfortable win and not one that you're holding the Saints off at the very end in kind of deal. Cardinals at 6-6, another feisty team hovering around 500. Some tough interceptions late from Kyler Murray. This is basically the Cardinals at this point here. They're a team that will come in, they will play your team extremely well, and they might even come away with a victory here, but they'll also potentially blow the game and blow the opportunity that they had, because they were up big, over 13 points in this game against the Vikings here, but offense stalling out late in the second half as the Vikings defense just basically completely shut down the offense in the second half here with just how good their run defense is, pressure coming after Kyler Murray, forcing him into some bad throws, or him just making bad throws in general. It is what it is. The Cardinals, another team in a good spot because they have some big victories, especially inside the division as well. Very much a window of opportunity here in a tight division where you're basically back by a single game right now. So not like the Cardinals season is over. Very much a real possibility that a team in the NFC West makes the playoffs sitting at like 9-8, something in that ballpark there. Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. And the Falcons rounding out the group here, sitting at 6-6. 4 interceptions out of Kirk Cousins, including a game-sealing one to lose the football game, is crazy. A 3-game losing streak where the offense that is as talented as they are with the names that they have, scoring not more than 17 points in that 3-game losing streak that they're currently on, is even crazier work than the 4 interceptions that we saw from Kirk Cousins in this game here. Considering how good the defense played in this game, there should have been a W in that win column as opposed to the loss that they took against the Chargers, because the defense shut it down. A pass rush that has been pretty lackluster. Not pretty lackluster, that's honestly putting it lightly. Literally the league's worst pass rush, essentially, this entire season. Put together a good game. They disrupted Justin Herbert. You also had a Chargers team that lost their star running back in J.K. Dobbins, and they were clearly reeling, trying to find a way to get the ball moving on the ground. You had the Chargers right where you wanted them, in your home stadium at that. You let another team from the West Coast come in and maybe not smack you around this time, but at least defensively give you the business. So tough look for the Falcons, and a team that is trending in the wrong direction right now with these 3 straight losses. This is a 6-3 Falcons team 3 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago, I should say, because they came off a bye week not too long ago. Them being at 6-6 right now does not bode well for them. And just following the trend, it feels like they're on the downswing, and a team in front of them, moving into the top half of the league, might be able to usurp them within the division here. Now, moving into the playoff hopefuls, as I always like to remind everyone, we have to have 7 teams from the AFC, 7 from the NFC. We need a division winner from each division, obviously, and then the remainder of the teams are wildcard teams from their respective conferences. At number 14, like I just alluded to, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will start at the bottom here. Seahawks are at number 13. The Texans dropping down to number 12 despite a win. The Chargers at 11. The Broncos at 10. Commanders at 9. The Ravens falling out of Super Bowl contenders here at number 8. And then the Packers round out the group at number 7. So we have some decent changing going on up here in the upper echelon of the NFL. Now, the Buccaneers, like I said, swinging up and over the Atlanta Falcons, despite the fact that they have 2 losses to the Falcons. This is more about me kind of following the trend that I feel like I'm seeing from both of these 2 teams right now, where the Falcons feel like they are on a downswing, and the Buccaneers, even though they had to grind their way to a victory against a Carolina Panthers team that I kind of expected to see hang around. I didn't expect it to go like that in overtime, but I think I predicted a 3-point game between the 2 teams. I don't remember what my final score was, but I'm pretty sure I said it was going to be close, but maybe more points. I don't remember exactly what it was. I'll have to go back and check. But the Buccaneers right now, they're winning. They got Mike Evans back. He is clearly on a tear, trying to get himself to that 1,000-yard season. You have somebody like Bucky Irving, who is running out of his, or just playing honestly out of his absolute mind, where he had, I think it was nearly like 180 total yards of offense or something like that with a score. This team is battling. The defense definitely has me nervous, but the entire NFC South as a whole is flawed from top to bottom, whether you're looking at the Bucs, the Falcons, or the 2 more bottom teams in the division here. It's the Bucs and Falcons division to lose right now, as they are sitting at 6-6 neck and neck. If the season ended today, it's obviously going to the Falcons just because of the head-to-head matchups. But with the way things are kind of trending, I feel like the Buccaneers right now, it's potentially their division to lose. They've got to keep winning. They need to bank on another Falcons loss, but the Buccaneers are 1 Falcons loss away from them controlling their destiny here, and something tells me, the way we've seen the Falcons playing the last few weeks, that might be a pretty likely situation they find themselves in. The Seahawks right above them at number 13. Leonard Williams kicked it off with that thick six, the longest pick six that you have ever seen from a 300-plus pound human on an NFL football field. Talk about an obscure stat that you can find, but they lurk across the internet if you look hard enough. And from that point on, the defense locked it down, shut it up, and that was it for the Jets the remainder of the game. That was such a big swing for that game as a whole because the Jets were driving. They looked like they were about to really open up a can of worms and just dump it all over the Seahawks. But the pick six started the comeback. From that point forward, again, defense shuts it down. Offense has to really grind it out, but ultimately ending with an 8-yard Zach Charbonnet run after the overturned fumble that nearly cost them the game. They got the job done. Got the job done, and going from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast again. It's the second time that we've seen the Seahawks do this. They did it to the Falcons. Funny enough, not too long ago, they spanked the Falcons at home. But going all the way across from one side of the country to the other in enemy territory, getting the win and securing a hold for now at least within the NFC West. And number 12. The Houston Texans. Good to see Houston win, but this was not a good win by any means. And honestly, after the loss last week, and then this very narrow escape where Trevor Lawrence gets knocked out of the game, and you let Mac Jones basically storm back on you, and you come away with just a 3-point victory, you could spin this as, good teams find ways to win when they find themselves playing down to their opponents in this type of situation. No. Not how I see this one in the slightest here. You come, and I get it, division rivals the last couple of weeks, and I've talked about it a lot. The AFC South is one of those divisions where the better team always plays down to the team that they're playing here. But when Trevor Lawrence goes down with his injury and he's done for the game, there's no reason that you have Mac Jones storming back on you. That's not how that script is supposed to play out. That's supposed to be the death blow to the Jaguars, where you're supposed to run away from the game and completely slaughter them at that point. That is the correct script to follow right there, not narrowly beating your division rival who just lost their starting quarterback to a really dirty hit from a player on your end. You're supposed to put that game away handedly from that point forward, and that's not what they did there. I'm starting to teeter on how I feel about this Texans team right now because very high on them coming into the season, and I felt like for a while, maybe it was just like an issue here, whether it was missing the star wide receiver you needed to have in Nico Collins or Stephon Diggs when he went down with an injury after Nico did, and then maybe it's the offensive line. But now I'm starting to think, is it something deeper than that? Like, we're skating by with wins here. We're losing to teams that we shouldn't be losing to the week prior. Or we're seeing losses, rather. It's just one of those things where it's not pretty in Houston. They're winning still, at least, sans last week. But this is one where the Texans are leaving me scratching my head right now, and I'm not really sure of what to make of them at this point, even if they are at 8-5. The Chargers right above them at 8-4. Second half was a nightmare for this offense here. You had 15 total offensive plays in the second half, not including the 2 kneel downs. If you want to put that on there, you had 2 kneels for 2 more plays there. You did not get a lot going offensively, and it's clear that this offense is reeling a bit from the loss of J.K. Dobbins. You've got to figure out what you're going to do about this running game going forward because J.K. Dobbins was crucial to what this offense was, which was a very balanced attack that because the threat of the run game was so severe that you had to, maybe add an extra guy or 2 into the box here and maybe open things up. And of course, you have the wide receivers in the passing game still dealing with drops every now and again. There's a lot working against you in LA at this current moment here. Someone needs to step up in that running back room ASAP, whether it's Gus the Bus, whether it's Kamani Vidal, whether it's somebody else in that running back room that I'm not aware of that needs to step up. Somebody needs to there. Receivers need to start catching the football more, though, but thankfully your defense did everything imaginable to keep you in that football game, but something needs to be figured out offensively there because that is not a recipe for sustained success going through the remainder of this season, especially sitting at 8-4 right now as a playoff team. you're not going to win a playoff game like that. You might skate by a bad team if you catch the right one in the playoffs, but you're more than likely not winning a football game like that. The Broncos sitting at 8-5, 2 pick sixes by the defense, the difference maker in this one here. Bo Nix had some really ugly throws that resulted in some turnovers, which were not necessarily great, but overall, this was such a fun performance for Denver because you have a defense that is letting up some really big plays, but even in spite of that, they're still coming away with these massive turnovers that are leading to points on top of that. So where the offense is sputtering and your rookie quarterback is finally, for the first time in like a month and a half and some change, finally looking like maybe a bit of a rookie quarterback, your defense is able to pick him up, dust him off, and help him out on the other end and put some points on the board here as they put 14, or helped you to 14 points on the board in this victory here. The Broncos are a really well-rounded team. I still think that they're a little bit lackluster in the run department. If they could just get the ball running a little bit more consistently on the ground, I'd feel really good about this football team. But with just how good the pass rush is, the playmakers they have there defensively as a whole, Pat Surtain, defensive player of the year candidate, if I do say so myself, and I'd be a little bit surprised if he doesn't come away with it. There are some other guys on there, but for me personally, PS2 is the guy that has my vote. He has been unbelievable to this point in his career, and he is locking dudes up week in and week out. At number 9, Washington Commanders. Sorely needed bounce back game, snapped the losing streak. He got nearly 300 yards of rushing on the ground, finishing the day with 267. This was really good to see for the Commanders because they needed this right now. That 3-game losing skid was ugly. And so for them now, sitting at 8-5, Jaden Daniels stepping up, reminding everybody why everyone was saying he was Offensive Rookie of the Year, maybe even Offensive Player of the Year. And there were people, myself included, it came out of my mouth a few times early in the season, considerably. Jaden Daniels, maybe MVP, like something like that. 4 touchdowns scored on the night for him. This is a great bounce back game. And again, kind of like a we're not done just yet type of deal, because there was the conversation, and in the doubters, of course, you're hearing the conversation because Cliff Kingsbury's the offensive coordinator over there, and people pointing the finger. Oh, see, here we go. Cliff Kingsbury team. Even though he's not the head coach, it's still his offense. They're starting to fail here late in the season. Can't finish his season. Look at his record. Look at his track record in the back half of the season. So it's good to see the Commanders with their backs against the wall on a losing skid get the job done, and really handedly at that, because there were a lot of people, and I was included on that list as well, that were worried about the Titans and just what they could potentially do to this Commanders team after how they looked against the Houston Texans just last week. The Ravens sitting at number 8 at 8-5, knocking them out of the Super Bowl contenders category here. I knew this was coming prior to this week playing out because I felt so confident in that Eagles defense giving them some problems, because we've seen the Eagles have some bad games here and there this season when they've gone against the right opponent, and I felt like the way the Eagles defense plays, I felt it. I felt it coming, and I was preparing for myself all weekend as to where I was going to put them depending on how this game played out, and the offense was just flat. I hope that I'm wrong about this, but at 8-5, putting up just 12 points against a team that at this stage is as legit as they come, sitting at the record that they are currently sitting at, I have my reservations. Lamar had some weird throws that were just off, whether it was under, it was too over. The Ravens did not look right, and you're in Baltimore of all places, and we've seen them fail in Baltimore already this season, and it's not good. The big question, though, that is looming, and we have to address the elephant in the room right now, is what is going on with Justin Tucker, and what do they do about it? Because Justin Tucker has made a name for being the guy that you go to in those big situations. And with that final score being what it was, you are 2 missed field goals away from winning that football game in that same exact situation. I don't know where they go with that. It'll definitely be something worth watching. But the big takeaway that I have is that he's missing a lot of those kicks to the left. something is up. Whether he's hurt, whether it's just his mechanics are off, something is in his head. A lot of those kicks are flying left. It's got to get corrected. The Packers rounding out the group at number 7, sitting at 9-3. Jayden Reed. At this point, he's my favorite Packers wide receiver. And I'm wondering, and I want an answer from you Packers fans, do you consider this the way I do? He is the number 1 in Green Bay right now, as far as the wide receivers are concerned. It feels like Christian Watson was kind of brought in to do that, and then Jayden Reed and Dubs were supposed to be the complementary pieces to it. But the way Jayden Reed can play with his utility, his ability to do so many different things with some of the trick plays that they do, giving him the football, and he can do so much, and he is just so good, so athletic, and such a great wide receiver at that. He's the number 1 for me. Yeah, that's how I feel like he has cemented himself this season as the guy in the wide receiver room in Green Bay, even if he wasn't supposed to be. Then you have Jordan Love, back-to-back games now, no interceptions. The turnover woes have quieted down, which is good. That was one of the big things that was really starting to concern me. The interception streak dating back to, I believe, the final game of last season, technically, for them. So that's finally over. You even have back-to-back games now with no interceptions, 4 touchdowns in that same span. Defense is coming up big in this game. 2 big stops on 4th down. Final score honestly made the game look closer than it was because, like I said, the defense felt like by the end of it, they were kind of just letting up as the game was winding down. Miami scored a garbage time touchdown type of deal. This Packers team is pretty damn legit in my eyes. Just outside looking in as far as Super Bowl contenders go, maybe if you want to put them in that group, I'd listen. But I'm not going to sit here and act like the turnover issues that we've seen from Jordan Love this season are just well in the rearview mirror. We've just gotten a couple of good weeks of no picks, no mistakes, no costly things. And I'm glad. I need to see a little bit more of that, though. And then to round out the Super Bowl contenders categories, you got a couple of new teams here. Sitting at number 6, Vikings fans. You're at 10. You're 10-2. In that bottom of the top, we'll get on that in a second. We'll get into that in a second here. But the Vikings have found their way back in the Super Bowl contenders category after I knocked them out quite a bit ago. The Steelers sit at number 5. The Chiefs are at number 4. The Eagles are at number 3. The Bills at number 2, and then the Lions at number 1. The Vikings, I've been saying this for a while. I needed a marquee game from Sam Darnold to really make me believe, and I was hoping it would come against a really good opponent. The Cardinals have been a feisty team that have given a lot of people problems, so to see the Cardinals give the Vikings problems in this game did not really surprise me. And honestly, I think my final score prediction for this game was like 24-23 or something like that. So I'm not surprised that the game came down to as tight as it did. But in a situation where you're down 13, the game has not really gone your way, especially offensively. To see Sam Darnold strap in, help lead this team to a comeback victory where the Vikings go for 3 straight scoring drives. You go touchdown, field goal, touchdown to ultimately put yourself in the lead. The defense at that same time just allowing 3 points and a couple of picks off of Kyler Murray as well. This made me believe a little bit more in the Vikings here, and honestly made me believe a little bit more in Sam Darnold. This is the first time in his career, coming into that, he was 0-23 in games trailing by 13 or more points. He finally gets the monkey off his back in that situation, two like basically touchdown deficits, and he gets the job done, leads his team back to a victory. I respect that, tip my cap to that. This was kind of a marquee moment in my opinion, even if it was just against a Cardinals team that's hovering around the middle of the NFL right now. They've given some teams some problems, and it's tough to come back in the NFL when you're down that much and things have gone that poorly for you offensively that late into a football game. So I've got to respect all of that entire performance from the entirety of the second half, what Sam Darnold was able to do despite where they were. I tip my cap to that. At number 5, we're looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers overcoming an early pick 6. I saw that and I was like, oh no, like here we go. This is not going to be good. And it felt like for a moment things might get out of hand. But Russell Wilson looked forward, never looked back, throws 2 touchdowns, back-to-back drives to get things going here. Defense came at a premium, but the big thing for me in this game answered a question that I've had about them for quite some time. And I know it's against the Bengals defense that has been a bit of a sand sieve here, but it's still a performance I wanted to see from the Steelers team nonetheless, is that this offense could go in and win them a football game. Yeah, you needed a big defensive score to help put this game away, but you also got it from Russell Wilson. You got it from your offense as a whole. Like, this is something you have not seen from a Steelers offense in quite some time, and that kind of completes the trifecta for me here. You've got good special teams. You've got a great defense. In this game against a division rival, I'll give some leniency as to how I look at that performance here. AFC North games are always really wacky. I thought this game was going to be a lot more lower scoring, but you can never really predict an AFC North clash. For them to come in and basically lean on the offense in this game here to win the football game. Again, big play from the defense, though. Don't get me wrong. That fumble return was massive. But the fact that your offense showed you could hang with a top-flight offense like Cincinnati, because, again, I think Cincinnati's fourth, maybe third best in scoring per game right now. They're a top-flight offense. Their defense is terrible, but they are a top-flight offense. You hung with them. That's key to me. That is something I've needed to see. And, again, that was the first time that this team put up 40 points or more since Week 10 of 2018. It has been more than 6 years since the last time they did that. Chiefs at number 4. And I kind of alluded to this earlier when we were talking about the Raiders. The script believers, honestly, you have yourself an argument. That has got to be one of the craziest endings to a game that I have ever seen. And I felt that way coming out of the Bears loss the day prior. The biggest issue for me, though, for the Chiefs in this game was just their inability to finish for 6. The settling for field goals was a bit of a problem here. And then you have Aiden O'Connell, who's throwing for 340 yards and a couple of scores against you here, as Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers are just torching your secondary. So definitely concerns there. This Chiefs team is doing some things that are really trying to test my belief in them right now. They're still winning, though. And they're still 11-1. They're locked into the playoffs now. They haven't won the division yet because the division's a little bit tougher than I think anyone really anticipated, but they're still in it. They still have one loss. They are literally still the number 1 seed in the AFC. As long as they keep winning, they have a shot to send everyone through KC again for another potential Super Bowl run. The Eagles at 3 have a very good case for the best offensive line and defensive line in the NFL right now. If you want to argue the Lions, go right ahead. You have a very fair argument. I'm not hammering the table for Eagles' best O-line. I'm not hammering it for the Lions either. I'm just saying that the Eagles have at least a conversation for best O-line and defensive line. And when you are the best in the trenches on both sides of the football, which is not something that happens very often in the NFL, you've got yourself not only a playoff contender, but a legitimate Super Bowl contending team. With Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter on the inside there, and what they have been able to evolve themselves into in just a very short time in Philadelphia, they are literal monsters, helping hold Derrick Henry to just 84 yards in this game, one of the lower productive games that he's had so far this season here. Keeping him under 100 has been like mission impossible for the vast majority of teams that the Ravens have gone up against. Then on top of that, you have the O-line, who is, again, paving literal highways for Saquon Barkley to run through this season, as he is en route to potentially breaking the rushing record with just how well he's been playing as well. When you can win in the trenches the way Philadelphia does, as I said already, both sides of the football on top of that, you've got something special going on there. Jalen Hurts does not need to play like an MVP when you've got an entire trench worth of guys on both sides of the football playing at the absolute best they could possibly be playing at and are ranked amongst the best in the entirety of the NFL. The Bills are sitting at number 2 for me. Josh Allen right now feels like the MVP favorite. I would love to see Saquon Barkley get it, don't get me wrong, but the reality is it's going to be a quarterback, and I roll my eyes heavily at that because I hate what the MVP has kind of devolved itself into. It's literally a quarterback award at this point here. In my opinion, Saquon Barkley is going to be a big reason as to why they are where they end up, wherever it ends up being. He is a key proponent to all of that. But I've got to say, what Josh Allen is doing is really impressive. He's taking care of the ball. He is making massive plays. That call for the lateral from Amari Cooper to score the touchdown was unbelievable. He has just looked so good. And the team as a whole, James Cook, his evolution over the last handful of years to what he has become today has been fantastic. And clearly what they're doing right now is working. The offensive line has looked really good. You had the offensive lineman literally admitting in postgame that they were running the same run play just over and over and over again. Like, that's how good they've got it going right now, which is not something that we've seen from Buffalo ever in the Josh Allen era. This is something that when I started my podcast 4 years ago, right around the championship games of 2021, I was hammering the table for the Bills going into that offseason to build an offensive line and figure out how they were going to get a run game going for Josh Allen. It's taken them some time, but they have done it. And we are seeing the fruits of that labor tenfold right now, because this team can throw the ball, they can run the ball. They don't have like these massive big name stars on the defensive side, but everyone plays really well, and they're amongst the better of their guys at their positions here, and they're getting healthy at the right time too. You have Matt Milano working his way back into the fold. You got his first game action in that same snow game there. So this is a team that is getting hot at the right time. They just locked up their 5th straight AFC East divisional win. Look out, because right now, the way the Bills are playing, they are the best team in the AFC, and the Lions at 11-1. I juggled the idea of moving them down, and here's why. I have legitimate concerns about just where they are health-wise on the defense. It feels like they're dropping like flies over there, and it is something that I do think is going to potentially catch up to them, but I want to give Detroit the benefit of the doubt, because what they've been able to do, despite all that, and still win football games, and they're sitting at 11-1 with just a rogue loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week number 2. This team has rattled off, I believe, 10 straight now, if that's correct. 10 straight, yes, right? Yeah, 10 straight, and they can run the ball. They can throw the ball with the best of them, whatever they need to do. The Sonic and Knuckles combo is crazy, although Jahmyr Gibbs exposing all the team's signals in that post from Snapchat or Instagram, whatever it was from, is a little bit crazy. Hopefully that doesn't affect things too much there. Dan Campbell didn't seem too worried about it, but I do think that is kind of concerning. But beyond that, I don't really have worries about this football team. Much tighter of a game than you would have liked against the Bears. But again, North Division matchups, they seem to be like that, whether it's the AFC or the NFC. They just go that way. For right now, I'm going to keep Detroit at 1, but I am worried about the health of that defense, and I'll leave it at that for now. But I will give them the benefit of the doubt. They haven't lost a game yet since that Week 2 matchup, and I'm not just going to start knocking and docking points because of a potential issue. Let me see the issue actually arise before I start discrediting them for anything. So those are my rankings coming out of Week 13 and going into Week 14 of the NFL. Let me know in the comment section down below. Thoughts, opinions, what am I getting right? What am I getting wrong? Let me know. But as always, if you made it to the end, I greatly appreciate it. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.